Hey everyone, welcome back to the She Interviews. I'm your host, Jessica Parks. For our feature interview today, I am here with my good friend, Shareyna Nicole. Shareyna, how are you?
I'm amazing, blessed, fortunate, and happy to be here. Thank you for having me as your guest.
Absolutely. I am so excited for you to tell your story. Shareyna and I actually know each other because our kids are friends. They were in the same kindergarten class. And I was the class mom. I don't know how they made me the class mom, guys, by the way. But Shareyna, thankfully, was very, very helpful and very active in that arena. So we got to start talking, figured out that we both have a lot of stuff in common. And Shareyna, she is just like a boss mom. There's no end to
Thank
all the
you.
stuff that
Thank
like
you.
she's in the process of doing, what she's gone through, what she's shared for other moms. So she's going to share a little piece of that with us today. And I am actually even trying to figure out where to start. So how about let's just start with like who you are, what you do for a living, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
So, so tell us a little bit about what you're doing for a living, your kids, all that stuff.
Okay. So I work for a company. It's called IEEE, and I work in university relations, where I assist students who are engineers and sort of making that transition from being a student to a young professional to being a actual official member. It's essentially a professional organization, and I support the students that are around the world at different campuses. So that's one piece, and I've been there for about, I would say, 9 years. Um, and I also adjunct at Rutgers. I started there 10 years ago, and I started in the writing program teaching expository writing. And it was interesting because when I first taught, I remember walking in the class and all the students said, "Are you the professor?" And I must have looked really young because now no one says that. So, and now I teach a studio course where essentially students who are from other countries who are really getting acclimated to the United States and just being a professional student, what that means in terms of the business world and how we communicate effectively in the business world. So I've been teaching that class for I think about 3 years. So I love both professions. I'm an educator, teacher at heart. I do a lot of one-on-one with my students, and so it becomes really fun, and it's exciting.
Yeah, I also believe that you have a coaching spirit, right? Because you just said I do those one-on-ones, and you also recently wrote a book, right?
I
And
did.
you wrote a book basically with kind of short stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
You-
the book I wrote is called The Test of a Woman, and I actually interviewed other women. I wanted them to be a part of the story, and I wanted them to actually share a piece of their life. A lot of times, as women, we don't like to share those things that are sort of intimate details or things that make us look different than what we perceive people to want us to know about us, right? So this book defies all that, and women shared pieces of their life that they had never told anyone. And it's anonymous, and the stories are anonymous, and there's also some self-reflection in there. I think as women, we don't always get to take the time to self-reflect because we're busy, we're moms and we're wives and we're all these other things, right? So it's an interesting culmination of stories. People who read the book have said, "Is this all one woman?" I have a hard time believing it's happened to one person, and then by the time they get to the end, they realize that it wasn't. But it's so many different pieces, and it could all be one person, and it could be, you know, a moment in time of something that's happening to you or happening to me. And these women were willing to share a piece of their life and to sort of free themselves.
So this is, first of all, this is phenomenal. I mean, the format in which you decided to do this book is just awesome because,
Thank
like you
you.
said,
Thank
like it's
you.
anonymous, so you don't really know. The thing that I love about this is like sometimes there's different things for us to focus on when we're relating to someone's story, right?
Yeah,
So like right now, people that are watching our interview, they're looking at me. They can see how I'm dressed, how I'm posed, how you're dressed, right? They can see our nationality, the color of our skin, whatever, just based on how we're talking and based on how we look to them. That is already starting to build the picture and how they're
exactly.
taking in our story, right? But
Exactly.
what you've removed that from the story and basically just gave like the raw emotions and the story. I don't even, it's almost like the floating emotions and features of the story without any of the physical appearance of the story.
Yeah, I didn't want it to be, oh, that's her story. Oh, that's what happened to her. There were so many pieces where someone said, I saw myself in the pages. I could see me or a woman that I knew. Even
Right.
men that read the book said, I remember one guy in particular, he said, I need to go apologize. I read your book and I realized that I had done some hurt to some women and I never had a chance to say sorry. I didn't know how it affected them. So people were able to capture a piece, and it allowed for these conversations to begin.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely. And there are, like, I highlighted some things in here. Oh, the question I wanted to ask you, because I was highlighting, these are other women's stories, but you kind of, how do you capture someone else's story, but you wrote it, right? Like, these are
Yeah.
your words,
Yes.
you telling someone else's story that they told to you.
So we literally did what we're doing right now. I said, you don't have to be a writer. You don't have to be an editor. I just want you to talk. And so as they spoke, I just started writing. I took notes. I wrote. And from that, I created their story. So a lot of the women, it was actually pretty funny. They said, which chapter was I? Because they didn't remember everything that we talked about. So they thought maybe they were chapter 1 or chapter 5. And then they realized that, wow, this was my chapter. But you know what? I saw myself here. I saw myself there. So it was a very natural conversation. And I found it to be very interesting because a lot of the women, as we were talking, we had to pause. She had to stop for a moment and say, I need to release. And we cried, we hugged, we laughed. And I said, okay, are you ready? Then we got back to telling the story.
So, okay, because the thing, like, I highlighted stuff in here, and the thing is, like, I don't want to call, I don't know if I should call them one liners, but there's like these little blurbs
Snippet.
in here that are just this is a short story, like short story, like a small book, easy read, but like
Yeah.
there's things in here that you can kind of chew on
Yes.
forever. Like, before I even knew myself, I became a mom.
Yeah.
I mean, how many women can relate to that? But before I
Exactly.
knew myself, I became a mom. I can relate to that. Not even knowing there is so much more to peel back from the onion about myself. I became a mom, and then, all these different pressure points are pushed on you that you didn't even know you had, and you're starting to
Exactly.
be tested, right? You're
Yes.
starting to be tested, and you're like, holy crap, like, this is how I operate
Yep.
here, and this is how I operate here. And and this is the running joke that I say, and why the She interviews exist, is like, I went through that mom identity crisis, and I became Zoolander, and I was like, who am I? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's,
Yeah.
you don't even realize that that's coming down the pipe until you have the kid.
Yeah. And then you're trying to teach them to be an individual, and they're watching you. They're watching you're growing. And I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and I said, growth is so uncomfortable, but the result is amazing. It
Yeah.
really is. I mean, no one really wants to have that sort of uncomfortable space, but when you've come out of it and you can look back, that's the part that's amazing. It's just when you're a mom and having to do that, it's challenging because they're growing with you.
Yeah, for sure. It's always a moving target.
Yes.
That's the problem. So, like, here, like, are these your words, or is this the woman's word? I fought patience daily, longing to return to my carefree life. I have a good baby, so what's wrong with me? How could I be happy and sad at the same time? How could I simultaneously want and not want to be a mother?
So pieces of that were, so I wrote it, right? So
Right.
there was no, I didn't take word for word what any of the women said. I took pieces of it. So the piece about, wanting to be a mom and not wanting to be a mom, I took that from the conversation we were having, and turned it into their story.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. So anyway, ladies, this is just like a little example of the things that are in here. And then also, Shareyna, in between the story, she included some questions that you can ask yourself for self-reflection, and which was wonderful. So thank you so much for sharing this. Where can people get your book?
So I have a social media page. It's actually The Test of a Woman. So that's really simple. You can send a message there. The link is also there to order it. You can also send me a message or email me directly, thetestofavoman@yahoo.com, and I can sign a copy for you. Or you can go online to Amazon or Barnes & Noble and get it there. It just won't be signed. So I'm happy to do that. And I've also done speaking engagements to groups of women, teenagers, and we talk about different topics. And so whenever I've done a speaking engagement, I always bring books with me.
So this has become a huge passion of yours,
Yes.
connecting with women, reaching out to women, helping them to understand themselves, find resources.
Yes.
Would you say that you've grown this passion out of the struggles that you've had in your own life and your own mom
Absolutely.
journey?
Absolutely. And, I didn't know that I was going to do that. I was also one of those very private people when it came to my personal life and things that I didn't want everyone to know until I was sort of exposed, I guess you could say, where everyone knew. And once I accepted that and I just shared and I was just very vulnerable and honest, it was like a weight. I freed myself. And the more I started talking, so when I wrote the book, I had no idea what was going to come from it. I had this dream in the middle of the night, and essentially it was me waking up to this name, The Test of a Woman. And so I went back to sleep, and then I kept hearing the name. And so I started to write the next day. I said, okay, well, I guess I'll just start writing, because it was almost like tugging on me. And then it became sort of this adrenaline rush. I continued to write and write and write daily. And then I said, okay, well, I need to figure out how to publish, because I never knew how to publish anything. And so I contacted publishers. I ended up self-publishing. And it was interesting because I asked them, like, what was my deadline? I wanted to get this out. I knew Rutgers, my students are coming back, and I needed to know. And they said, well, ma'am, you have about 30 days if you want to get this out by this deadline. And so that's what happened. I literally wrote day and night and interviewed, and the whole book was birthed in 30 days, front, back, cover, everything. And then, I had a book signing, and, I thought that was going to be it. And then women were contacting me in groups and asking me to come and speak and to share. And so the more vulnerable I became, the more I saw women's growth, and the more, I guess the word is freedom. The more free I became. My own freedom. I saw women who were sort of saying, I don't care anymore what people think. I just want to be honest. I want to be healed in this area. And so that for me became a driving force, because the more I shared, the more women were able to connect. And so I just continued to go speak. I spoke at colleges. I spoke at schools. I had my own conference, and it was amazing to be facilitating something with 75 women. I had vendors, we had workshops, and women were releasing. I mean, we literally released balloons into the atmosphere with Post-its on them, with things they wanted to get rid of, get out of their life. And to watch it was incredible.
Yeah. Like I mean, did you just like stop and look at everything that was going on around you and be like, wow, like I was the catalyst that
Yeah. Yeah,
sparked all this
I
happening?
did, because I had no idea. It wasn't on my vision board. I had no idea. But it needed to happen. And so, that was in 2016. It's 2020. And I actually just had an interview the other day for someone who wants me to speak to a group of women at her job virtually. And it's almost like this living, breathing piece of work that it's just forever, right? It doesn't,
Yeah,
it was never really meant to just be a book. It was really meant to be more of a conversation. And those conversations are still happening.
absolutely.
So that's been powerful. And even, when I've paused, or, maybe I'm not posting every day because I'm busy or whatever, it's still alive, and people are
Yeah.
still contacting me, and they're still saying, I read your book. I couldn't put it down. And thank you. I just want to say thank you. So for that, I know that I did what I was supposed to do.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. So, ladies that are listening right now, okay, if you have something tugging at you, figure out how to add it into your schedule and get it done.
Yeah.
Because if it's tugging, that means you need to get it done. That
Oh,
means.
yeah.
And then the fun thing I think is when you submit to that, and like you said, this wasn't on your vision board, but you
No,
submitted to it anyway, and you had no idea what was going to come of it, or you couldn't even imagined what a ripple effect it was going to have.
exactly. Exactly. And so it became confirmation. So, people, when I would speak, would say, well, how come this is not a story about you? And I said, that's not what the intent was to be. And so I would start to talk about my own story the more I went to, different venues. And so
Let's talk about your story.
yeah, so that became part of it. As you know, I became a mom fairly young. I mean, I was 24, but very unexpected. I had graduated. I was living on my own. I was in the middle of getting my master's, and I was pregnant. And I remember just feeling like I had disappointed so many people around me, and I didn't know, what it was going to be like to be a mom. I knew that I always wanted to be a mom, but just not at that time. And it was challenging. My pregnancy, I was high risk pregnant. I was on bed rest. I had gained an inordinate amount of weight, and I was just scared to really be a mom and try to do it right. And
Right.
I mean, she's obviously much older now, but I completely was absorbed into my child. I did everything for her. I no longer had a personal life, and that was also unhealthy because I just didn't know who I was. I remember one day someone asked me, "What do you like to do?" And I couldn't answer the question because all I did was work, take care of a baby, and go to school. And I had
Why do you think
really
that you
never.
became so absorbed in her?
I think I just wanted to not just protect her, but I wanted to, I guess, just hold on to this jewel that I had and make sure I did it right. I felt as though I had already started out. Me and her dad were going through a rough patch, and I wanted to make sure that I did it right because I actually had became something that I never wanted to be. I didn't want to be a single mom, and that was challenging. And so I wanted to make sure that I poured into her so she didn't feel any of those effects.
Mm.
And so I think at the time it worked because it helped me to really just focus on what I wanted to be as a mom and define that. But for me personally, I wasn't able to develop that. I mean, in college, you're not really developing who you're going to be and what you want to do. And so career wise, there was things that, I wanted to move up in the ranks, but I couldn't because I couldn't travel as much. And I got offered an opportunity in Florida and I had to turn it down because I couldn't move without a support system. So a lot of things became very real to me. And so I continue to just focus on her. And I mean, I don't regret that piece of it because now we have a great relationship, but I wanted her to know that she can talk to me about anything. So from the time she was 3, I'd pick her up and I would say, tell me 3 things about your day. I don't care what it is, good, bad, who you ate lunch with. And to this day, she's 11, 3 things about your day is something that we talk about. And so now I don't have to pull it out of her and she tells me. And she's in middle school now, but it is amazing because, in middle school, you don't always want to talk to your mom and tell her what's happening or what's the latest. And so I've been able to watch that growth just in our conversation, but it was work.
Yeah. So that's okay. So that's the first turning point, right?
Yes.
Where you started to realize you were getting lost in who your identity, who you really were when you had your first child unexpectedly. And then you had just mentioned about that rough patch. So
Yeah.
that was the second thing, right? Becoming a widow.
Yep. Yep. So I had gotten married to someone who I knew for years, and we sort of reconnected in life. And our marriage was toxic. I'll just use that word. It was very unhealthy. And so I struggled. I didn't really want to just end my marriage or walk away from my marriage. I really wanted to work through it. But there was a lot that had happened in just a matter of 6 months between, I was pregnant, we had moved out, his mom passed. He lost his job. I mean, everything my car got totaled. I mean, anything that you could imagine within 6 months happened. And
The
so,
perfect storm.
yeah, it literally was. And so, we had decided, I decided actually that we were going to separate and that, if we could work together, that would be great. But he didn't want to do the work in that sense. And so I needed to make a decision. And the decision was that I no longer wanted to be married. And we were supposed to sign the documents and papers and meet. And I never heard from him. And I, wondered what happened. I sent him a text message and he responded. It was very strange, hours later, and just said, I love you. And that was it. I never heard anything else. And then I got a call from a detective, and they told me he was gone, that he had took his own life. So that was a very traumatic experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
what did you do right then? Like where was your head? What did you do next?
Um, you know, it's actually a little bit of a blur. I guess you could say, no one knew that we were having trouble. So it was interesting because even at work, I mean, people were like very shocked. And I remember someone reached out to me and said, you know, she actually said something that was very strange. She said, I feel weird saying this, but he wasn't supposed to be your husband. And I said, what? And she said, she was very spiritual. And she said, I had this confirmation that he was not supposed to be your husband. And so I said, okay. And she, then I opened up to her and I kind of shared what was happening. She said, okay, now it makes sense. Because she said she felt very weird saying it. And I just shared with her, that we were having challenges and it was a lot that was happening. And so after that time, she and I sort of had gotten closer. And I just, at that moment, I didn't know what to do. I just felt like I needed to, again, I sort of had to focus on my children. I had a 1-year-old and I had, I think she was almost 5 at the time.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop, right? Like I couldn't take months off. I still had to be a parent. I still had to work on myself. And that's when I tried to really take the time to say, okay, who is Shareyna? What does she want? And really focusing on me. And that time became so necessary and so powerful. And in the midst of mom guilt, in the midst of everything else that was happening, I was able to take some of my time back, take some self-care, which I had not done before.
Right. Wow. So in that time frame, what would you say was your big breakthrough? Because then you did eventually start a new relationship. Like now you are the mom of a total of 4 kids,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So what kind of transformation did you make during that rough patch that led you to basically the life that you live now?
Yeah. I had to do a lot of work on myself and realize that there was, it's easy to blame someone else for a relationship failing, right? Or a friendship failing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I had to look at myself and say, okay, what are some things that I did? What are some things that I could do better? Not for the other person, but for myself. And so I started to do a lot of reflection and I started to do a lot of,
Were you writing?
I never was someone who just wrote my feelings. I would journal here and there, but I wasn't an avid writer every single day. And probably because I was, I had 44 students and I was grading papers. So I
Right,
didn't want to
right.
write. Yeah. But I would do a lot of quiet time. I would go out to eat by myself and just sit for hours and just be. I'm always busy between working and teaching and kids and activities, and
Right.
there's always something to do. And so I had to learn how to just be still. And I was for a while. I mean, I dated here and there, but I learned to date myself and go out by myself and just spend time with me. And I learned things that I loved. I learned that I love flowers. I learned that I love walking outside and sitting outside. I learned that I love having me time and that how important that is to me. And how, yes, getting a massage and a facial once a month to me is a part of self-care because I need the quiet time. Driving in my car, sitting in traffic doesn't bother me because I actually enjoy the quiet.
Yeah.
I think I had to really learn what I like. And even now, not being afraid to say, this is what I like, this is what I need, and I'm not going to be afraid to take that time. And
Yeah.
so even with my children, even with work, in the midst of this pandemic, my job scheduling meetings, 5 meetings back to back, I'm not afraid to say no and say, you know what, that's not going to work because this is not going to help me be the best version of myself. Um, so
And
that's the work that I had to do and figuring out how can I be the best version of me for me so that in the future, I'm still Shareyna.
And you figured this all out on your own, or did you have a mentor? Did you have book resources? What was it that you got
Yeah, I went
guidance
to
from?
counseling for a little while. She and I would talk through a lot. I have a lot of my close friends, I wouldn't say a lot, a few of my close friends are a lot older than me, by like 20 years. And so I started making time just to be around them and to be with them. And also listening. I think, I'm naturally a talker, and naturally, my profession allows me to just talk. But trying to really listen and develop those relationships and make time for those relationships really helped me a lot as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can actually, that was actually one of the first things that I had noticed about you, that even you have a lot to give, but I think sometimes people will get this spark where, oh, I have something to give, and then they stop listening.
Yeah.
And I can tell that, you're not someone you're that has stopped listening. You continue to listen and process and learn from the world around you, which I think is going to make you have even more to keep giving
Yes. Yes.
to
Yes.
us. So that's fantastic. So, okay, so now you did that work, and then when did you get remarried?
I got remarried in last year, actually. Like, what year is it? What day is it? Last year.
Congratulations. Wow, I didn't
Thank
realize
you.
it was that recent.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Okay.
moved to the town, and we were in the midst of planning the wedding, and we had some challenges with just, sort of figuring out, what was next and what that looked like. So, yeah, last year.
Okay, so you are still going through a little bit of a your next turning point, I would say. Because I'm
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
that's fantastic. What kind of advice can you give to our moms right now that maybe are going through that rough patch, or have kind of lost their way,
Yeah.
and just maybe even feel hopeless? Like, man, there's just the perfect storm. One thing keeps hitting me after another. What's the first move that those moms should be making right now?
The first thing I would say is breathe. I think as moms, sometimes, and I'm guilty of this, we look around and there's so much to do. We feel overwhelmed and we feel as though we have to do it all. And you don't. If it doesn't get done today or next week, it's going to be okay. Um, I think it's okay to be unapologetically yourself. It's okay if every day you don't want to get up and look like something and go be super mom. It's okay to say you're sorry. There are times where I'm not the best mom to my kids, and I tell them, you know what, I messed up today, and it's okay. I think as a mom, we're expected to be so much for everybody else every single day, and that's exhausting. I mean,
Yeah,
literally every day you have to get up and do the same thing. There's no time to just say, you know what, not today.
right.
Allow yourself that time to do that. It is only going to help you. It's only going to help your children, and it helps them to see that you're real, and you're a person. You're a mom, but you're a person. And so, usually when we list things, we start with "I'm a mother" instead of saying "I'm all these things." And a mother is another title, but we do hold it in such high regard because we feel like that's our power. But you have your own power, and it's you.
Yeah, I love it. Shareyna, so what's next for you on your journey through life? So we got a brand new marriage. We went from, you have two biological kids, right? We've
Yes,
just added two on, so we're getting that blend going on. So that's going to be a project in itself for you. But
yes.
then also professionally, you're working on another book, right?
I am. So actually, last year I had decided I was going to write a book, and I knew what I wanted to be called, and I just getting the momentum and getting it written was not as simple as my first one. So I was a little frustrated, um,
What
but
made you decide to do the second one?
I decided to do it last year. But I had named it, and I knew what I wanted it to be called, but I knew I was going to start writing it this year. And in January, actually, my father passed, and
I'm sorry.
the name of the book is Letters to My Father. And so every time I pick up a pen, it's not that simple to just write. But this is
Yeah.
actually my dad around my neck. I wear him every single day, and so one piece of me is excited to write, and the other piece of me is not. One of the things is that as women, as girls, there's so many things I wish I would have asked my dad. And even when he was alive, I would not have asked him because I just knew that certain things wouldn't, first of all, he probably wouldn't answer them. But I really didn't want the book to be a dialogue between he and I because, again, my experience, my relationship with him is very different. I want it to be letters from little girls and from women, married women, teenagers that have questions for their dads. And so it's called Letters to My Father, and I'm working on how to put that together. And I don't know if I haven't figured out if I wanted to be just me and having this conversation, or if I wanted to be similar to my first book. So it's been sort of a struggle, but I'm sort of sitting in that because for whatever reason, it's meant to sort of have this transition. And so I'm not rushing it. I'm not forcing it. I do have a deadline in my head, but when it comes, it comes, So I'm excited to write it. I think I'm going to dedicate it to my father naturally. But it's bigger than just me asking questions. I really want it to be, again, healing. A lot of girls, even who grew up with their dads, some of them didn't have great relationships, and some of them did. And so there's always this sort of room for growth there. And so I'm excited to work on that as a different piece. And ultimately, Letters to My Father is going to have a result that's not necessarily about just talking to your dad, because that affects us. Whatever, your experience was, having a father, not having a father, all those different bits and pieces really translates to who we are today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. And, we actually did, Jenny posted something, my partner Jenny posted something, I don't know, about a month ago, the statistics for single moms versus single dads. Children growing, there's more kids that are growing up without a father than a mom. So there really is a distinction to be made between
Oh, yeah.
the presence and not having that presence. So good, bad, or indifferent.
Exactly.
So, well, I wish you tons of luck, but I don't think you'll need it, because I know that with your uh, intuition and your patience, that you're going to figure out, when the right time to put that pen to the paper is.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, and it's going to be great. So I can't wait to check that out. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us
You're
today,
welcome.
ladies. If you want to check out Shareyna's book, it's, again, you can go to her page, your Instagram
Yeah, you can
page,
go to
and
my Instagram. Yep.
it's also on Amazon,
It's
right?
on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble. It's on ShareynaNicole.com. You can email me directly, and I can, you can submit payment through PayPal, and I can sign it. It's multiple ways to get it.
All right, absolutely. So thank you again for tuning in, everyone, to the She Interviews. We will see you next time.
Hi, thank you.